The email notification glowed on Vivian Malone's computer screen, but she barely registered it. Her attention was focused on locating a patient's X-ray that needed urgent review before tomorrow's appointment. Normally, she would have checked her own computer, but it was undergoing maintenance, so she'd resorted to using her husband Tony's desktop in his private office. A quick search through his neatly organized files should have been simple enough. Vivian brushed a strand of her honey blonde hair away from her face, adjusting her stylish black-framed glasses as she scrolled through the dental records. After 15 years of marriage and 12 years running their successful dental practice together, she and Tony had their professional rhythm down to a science. The Malone Dental Clinic had become one of the most respected practices in the area, built from the ground up with the inheritance money from her father. She could still remember the pride in his eyes before he passed away, knowing his daughter would use his life's savings to build something meaningful. As Vivian searched for the file, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen, a text message. Normally, she would have ignored it, respecting Tony's privacy, but the preview caught her eye. "Can't wait to see you Saturday. Missing your touch." The sender was listed as Sabrina P. Vivian froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. A wave of confusion washed over her. Tony didn't have Saturday appointments scheduled, at least not at their main clinic. He occasionally worked at a satellite office in the neighboring town on weekends, handling overflow patients who couldn't make weekday appointments. "It's probably nothing," she whispered to herself, trying to quell the sudden unease settling in her stomach. Yet her hand moved almost involuntarily to click on the message thread. What she saw made her blood run cold. The exchanges between Tony and this Sabrina person spanned months. They were intimate, explicit, and unmistakably romantic. References to special afternoon appointments and private treatments that were clearly not dental in nature. Photos she couldn't bring herself to fully look at. Plans for weekend rendezvous disguised as professional obligations. "No," Vivian whispered, her voice breaking in the empty office. "No, no, no." The room seemed to spin around her as 15 years of trust crumbled in an instant. She scrolled up, desperately hoping there was some explanation, some misunderstanding that would make sense of this nightmare. Instead, she found confirmation that Sabrina was indeed a patient, one who Tony had been seeing privately on Saturday afternoons at their smaller clinic location in the next town over. When he couldn't travel to the satellite office, he would occasionally see her at the main clinic during closed hours on Saturday afternoons, listing it as administrative time in the schedule. Vivian felt physically ill. How could she have missed this? How long had it been happening right under her nose? The messages went back nearly 8 months. 8 months of lies, of Tony kissing her goodbye on Saturday mornings with claims of catching up on paperwork or handling special cases. She thought about all the times she'd suggested joining him at the satellite office to help, and how he'd always had a ready excuse why that wasn't necessary. How he sometimes came home late, smelling of cologne she didn't recognize, but had attributed to long days with patients. All the pieces that hadn't quite fit, but that she'd dismissed because she trusted him implicitly. Vivian closed the message thread with trembling hands, fighting back tears. She was not a woman who cried easily, but this betrayal cut deeper than anything she'd ever experienced. She sat motionless in Tony's leather office chair, staring blankly at the computer screen, trying to process the devastating revelation. Their anniversary was next month. 15 years. They'd been planning a trip to Hawaii to celebrate, a rare vacation from their demanding schedule. Tony had been the one to suggest it, had seemed excited about it. How could he look her in the eyes and plan a romantic getaway while carrying on with another woman? A sound in the hallway startled her back to awareness. Glancing at the clock, she realized the cleaning staff would be arriving soon. Quickly, Vivian found the X-ray file she'd originally been searching for and transferred it to her USB drive. Then, with a moment's hesitation, she took screenshots of several incriminating messages, sending them to her personal email. Evidence. The word tasted bitter in her mind, but some pragmatic part of her knew she needed it. She shut down the computer and composed herself, taking deep breaths and straightening her white lab coat. No one could know. Not yet. Not until she figured out what to do. The drive home that evening was a blur. Tony had left earlier for a dental conference in Chicago, or so he claimed. Now she wondered if that was true, or just another cover for meeting his mistress. The beautiful home they shared, once a sanctuary, now felt like a museum of lies. Photos of their vacations together, their dental school graduation, the grand opening of their clinic, all moments she'd cherished, now called into question. Vivian couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, running through every scenario, every option. Confrontation? Divorce? Forgiveness? None seemed right. None could erase the image of those messages or heal the gaping wound in her heart. By morning, she'd made one decision. She needed professional help, not a therapist, though perhaps that would come later, but a lawyer. If her marriage was over, she needed to protect herself and the business she'd built with her father's legacy. Doubter Angelica Holden came highly recommended. With 20 years of experience in divorce law and a reputation for fierce protection of her clients, she seemed the perfect ally in this nightmare. Vivian secured an appointment for that afternoon, claiming a dental emergency to her staff to free up her schedule. Angelica's office exuded the same confidence as the woman herself. Tasteful art adorned the walls, and the leather chairs felt both expensive and comfortable. When Angelica walked in, her commanding presence immediately put Vivian at ease. Here was someone who could handle this mess. "Tutora Malone," Angelica said, extending her hand. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Vivian managed a weak smile. "Please, call me Vivian." As Vivian recounted her discovery, Angelica listened intently, occasionally making notes but mostly maintaining eye contact, offering subtle nods of understanding and sympathy without interruption. "The clinic," Vivian said finally, her voice growing stronger as she articulated her primary concern. "I built it with my inheritance from my father. Every penny of the initial investment came from me. I can't lose it. Not to him. Not after this." Angelica leaned forward. "Do you have documentation? Proof that the initial investment came solely from your inheritance?" Vivian's heart sank. "It was 12 years ago. I never thought." She trailed off, the weight of her naivety crashing down on her. "I never imagined needing to prove it. We were happy. We were partners. No one enters a marriage expecting it to end," Angelica said gently. "But without documentation, it becomes more complicated. The business started during your marriage, which typically makes it marital property, regardless of where the initial funds came from." "So he gets half?" Vivian asked, barely containing her outrage. "Half of what I built? Half of my father's legacy?" "Not necessarily," Angelica replied, her expression thoughtful. "We have options. First, do you have a copy of your father's will or the inheritance paperwork?" "I should have it somewhere in our storage. We've kept financial records from the beginning of the practice." "Good. We'll need to find those documents. What about bank statements from that time? Anything showing the money moving from your account to purchase equipment, secure the location, anything related to starting the business?" Vivian thought back. "I'm sure those records exist in our storage archives. We keep financial documents for at least 10 years. "Excellent. That's a start." Angelica made another note. "Now, about the infidelity. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, but evidence of his affair might help us negotiate a more favorable settlement. What proof do you have?" Vivian pulled out her phone, showing Angelica the screenshots she'd taken. "These messages go back months. They're explicit." Angelica examined them carefully. "These are helpful, but we'll want more. Text messages can sometimes be challenged. Do you have access to his email? Credit card statements showing gifts or hotel stays? Anything else suspicious?" "I haven't looked," Vivian admitted. "I just found out yesterday." "That's understandable," Angelica assured her. "Here's what I recommend. Don't confront him yet. We need time to gather evidence and build our case. Can you access financial records without raising suspicion? Vivian nodded. I handle most of our accounting. Perfect. Look for unusual expenses, hotel charges, gifts, anything that might correlate with times he claimed to be working. But be discreet. If he suspects you know, he might start covering his tracks or hiding assets. The conversation continued, with Angelica outlining a strategy that felt both reassuring and overwhelming. As Vivian prepared to leave, the lawyer offered one final piece of advice. Vivian, this will be difficult. There will be days when you want to scream at him, throw his things out the window, or worse. Resist those urges. Document everything. Follow our plan, and I promise you'll come out of this with what you deserve. Driving back to the clinic, Vivian felt a strange calm settling over her. The initial shock had given way to something else. Determination. Tony had betrayed her, had risked everything they'd built together for some affair. He would not take her father's legacy, too. As she pulled into the parking lot of Malone Dental Clinic, Vivian noticed Tony's name beside hers on the sign. Soon, she promised herself, it would be her name alone. That Thursday evening, Vivian began her search for the documentation Angelica had requested. She waited until Tony was asleep, then quietly made her way to their home office where they kept copies of important personal documents. If the originals weren't there, she would need to check the storage room at the clinic where they archived older financial records. After an hour of methodical searching, she found what she was looking for. A copy of her father's will clearly stating the inheritance amount, along with old bank statements showing the transfer of those funds to her personal account. It wasn't everything they needed, but it was a start. The clinic's financial records would hopefully provide the rest, showing the money moving from her personal account to establish the business. The next morning, Tony left for his conference in Chicago, promising to return Sunday evening. Vivian maintained her composure, wishing him a safe trip, while internally questioning whether there was any conference at all. As soon as he was gone, she called Angelica with an update on the documents she'd found so far. That's excellent progress, Angelica said. Now, we need the business records showing the actual establishment of the clinic with those funds, and any other evidence of the affair you can gather safely. I'll look through our storage archives at the clinic today, Vivian promised. Most of our staff takes Saturday off, so I'll have privacy. Saturday morning arrived with a strange mixture of dread and purpose. Vivian drove to the clinic early, knowing she would have the place to herself. The storage room was meticulously organized. One thing she and Tony had always agreed on was the importance of proper record keeping. It took time, but eventually she located the boxes labeled Clinic Founding 2013 and began carefully reviewing their contents. What she found exceeded her expectations. Detailed records of equipment purchases, property acquisition, and contractor payments, all clearly showing the funds coming from her personal account. There were even handwritten notes she'd made during the planning phase, referring specifically to using her inheritance to make their dream a reality. Vivian was carefully replacing the documents after photographing them when she heard the front door of the clinic open. Freezing, she listened intently. She wasn't expecting anyone today. The sound of footsteps in the reception area sent her heart racing. Had Tony returned early? Had he somehow discovered what she was doing? "Hello?" called a familiar voice. "Is anyone here?" It was Janice Avery, their receptionist of 3 years. Vivian exhaled in relief, quickly closing the storage boxes and straightening her clothes before stepping out. "Janice, what brings you in on a Saturday?" The young woman startled slightly. "Dr. Malone, I didn't know you'd be here. I forgot my phone charger yesterday and thought I'd stop by to pick it up." She paused, her expression becoming hesitant. "Actually, since you're here, could I speak with you about something? In private?" Something in Janice's tone caught Vivian's attention. "Of course. Let's go to my office." Once inside with the door closed, Janice seemed to struggle with how to begin. I don't know how to say this, and I've been debating whether I should since last Saturday." Vivian felt a flutter of anticipation. Whatever it is, you can tell me. Last Saturday afternoon, I came back to the office to get my wallet that I'd left in my desk drawer. I thought no one would be here, but Janice twisted her hands in her lap nervously. I saw Deuter Tony with a woman. They were intimate in his office. They didn't see me, but I saw them clearly. She looked up, her eyes meeting Vivian's. I'm so sorry. I know this puts me in an awkward position, but I couldn't keep it to myself. You've been so good to me, and it just didn't feel right staying silent. Despite already knowing about the affair, hearing this confirmation from Janice hit Vivian like a physical blow. She maintained her composure, however, not wanting to reveal how much she already knew. Thank you for telling me, Janice, she said quietly. I appreciate your honesty. Did you recognize the woman? Janice nodded reluctantly. She's been a patient here. Sabrina, something. Tall, dark hair, always schedules appointments on Fridays or asks about Saturday availability. Vivian felt a surge of gratitude for Janice's loyalty. This young woman had risked her job to tell the truth, not knowing how Vivian might react. Would I have believed her if I hadn't seen the evidence myself? Vivian wondered. Or would I have defended Tony, dismissed her claims? Janice, what you've told me is difficult to hear, but important. I want you to know your position here is secure. In fact, Vivian said, making a split-second decision, I may need your help in the coming weeks. Can I trust you to be discreet? Absolutely, Dra. Malone. Anything you need. As Janice left her office, Vivian turned to look out the window at the busy street below. The pieces were falling into place. She had evidence. She had a witness. And now she needed a plan. Not just for divorce, but for something more immediate. Something that would give her a taste of justice before the legal system slowly ground through its process. Fortune, it seemed, was on her side. That evening, as she was preparing dinner alone in the quiet house, her phone rang. It was Tony. Hey, Viv, he said, sounding stressed. Bad news. My car broke down on the way back from the conference. The transmission is shot, and they can't get the parts until Monday at the earliest. That's terrible, Vivian replied, carefully controlling her tone to sound appropriately sympathetic. Where are you now? About 2 hours outside the city. I've got a rental, but I won't be back until late tomorrow. What about your Saturday appointments at the satellite office? Vivian asked, seeing an opportunity forming. Tony hesitated before responding. I was going to call and reschedule them, but would you be willing to cover for me? Just this once? It's only 3 patients. All routine procedures. I suppose I could, Vivian said, as if considering the request. What time is the first appointment? 10 a.m. The last one is at 3 o'clock, a cleaning for Sabrina Payne. It took every ounce of Vivian's self-control not to react to the name. Sabrina Payne, she repeated casually. Is she a regular? Semi-regular, Tony replied, his voice suddenly overly casual. She works odd hours, so Saturday appointments work best for her. I see. Vivian paused, letting the moment stretch uncomfortably. Well, I suppose I can help out. Just this once. You're a lifesaver, Tony said, relief evident in his voice. I'll make it up to you. Yes, Vivian thought darkly. You certainly will. Saturday arrived with a sense of inevitability. Vivian drove to the satellite office, her mind clear and focused for the first time since discovering Tony's betrayal. She handled the first 2 appointments with professional efficiency, all the while mentally preparing for the third. At precisely 3 o'clock, the satellite office's part-time receptionist showed Sabrina Payne into the examination room. Vivian's first glimpse of her husband's mistress was a shock. The woman was beautiful, yes, but also much younger than Vivian had expected. Perhaps 30 at most, with long dark hair and the kind of confidence that came from knowing the effect one had on others. Hello, Sabrina, Vivian said pleasantly, extending her hand. I'm Dra. Vivian Malone. My husband had car trouble, so I'll be handling your cleaning today. Sabrina's momentary surprise quickly gave way to a practiced smile. Oh, how nice to meet you. Tony, Doubter Malone. speaks so highly of you." "I bet he does," Vivian thought, maintaining her professional demeanor. "All good things, I hope. Let's get started, shall we?" The cleaning proceeded normally. Vivian was meticulous, perhaps more gentle than necessary, building a rapport with Sabrina through the limited conversation possible during a dental procedure. She learned that Sabrina was a pharmaceutical sales representative, which explained her flexible schedule, that she lived alone, having recently moved to the area, that she had met Doubter Tony at a dental conference 9 months ago. Each revelation was another small cut, but Vivian endured them, her plan firmly in mind. As the cleaning concluded, Vivian prepared her special surprise. From a cabinet, she removed what appeared to be an ordinary bottle of mouthwash, though its contents had been replaced that morning with water from the office toilet. "Before you go," Vivian said warmly, "I'd like you to try our special rinse. It's a professional-grade formula that helps maintain the cleaning effect and prevents plaque buildup much more effectively than over-the-counter products." Sabrina looked interested. "Is it something I can buy?" "It's actually a proprietary blend we offer to special patients," Vivian explained, pouring the yellowish liquid into a small cup. "It has a rather strong taste, much stronger than commercial rinses, but the results are worth it." "That's so thoughtful," Sabrina said, accepting the cup. "Tony never mentioned this before." "Oh, it's a new product I've been particularly impressed with," Vivian replied smoothly. "I insisted we start offering it to our most valued patients." Sabrina took the rinse, swishing it around her mouth as instructed. To her credit, she managed not to grimace too noticeably at the taste, though her eyes widened slightly. "It is strong," she commented after spitting it out, "and has an unusual flavor." "That's the active ingredients," Vivian explained, fighting to keep her expression neutral. "They're quite potent. Would you like to take some home? I can prepare a small bottle for you to use daily. It works best with consistent use." "That would be wonderful," Sabrina said, clearly pleased by the special treatment. "You're so kind. I can see why Tony speaks so highly of you." As Vivian prepared a small bottle of the special rinse, filling it with more toilet water, she maintained pleasant conversation, asking about Sabrina's work and interests as if they were becoming friends. All the while, a cold satisfaction settled in her chest. Let her gargle with that for a while, she thought. Let her share that intimacy with my husband. "Use it every night before bed," Vivian instructed, handing over the bottle. "You'll notice a significant difference in how clean your teeth feel." "Thank you so much, Dra. Malone," Sabrina said, genuinely grateful. "It was lovely meeting you." "The pleasure was all mine," Vivian replied with perfect sincerity. "I do hope we'll see each other again soon." As she watched Sabrina leave, clutching her bottle of toilet water mouthwash, Vivian felt the first real smile cross her face in days. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough to balance the scales of what Tony had done, but it was a start. And as she closed up the office that evening, she realized something important. She wasn't broken. Hurt, yes. Betrayed, absolutely, but not broken. The real reckoning was still to come. That evening, Vivian's phone chimed with a notification, a text message from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she opened it, immediately recognizing who it must be from. "Hi, Dr. Malone. This is Sabrina Payne. I hope you don't mind, but I got your number from the clinic contact info. I just wanted to thank you again for today and let you know I tried the rinse you gave me. You weren't kidding about the strong taste. It almost smells like, well, I don't want to be gross, but it has an unusual odor. Is that normal? It's working great, though. My teeth feel super clean." Vivian stared at the message, a mixture of shock and dark amusement washing over her. She hadn't expected Sabrina to contact her directly, much less to provide updates on her experience with toilet water as mouthwash. For a moment, she considered ignoring the message, but a wicked inspiration struck her. "Hello, Sabrina," she typed back. "So glad to hear you're using the rinse. Yes, the odor is completely normal. That's how you know it's working. The active ingredients have a distinctive smell that commercial products mask with artificial flavors, but we prefer the professional-grade formula in its pure state. Keep using it nightly for best results." She hit send and then burst into laughter so sudden and loud that she had to muffle it with a pillow, not wanting to wake Tony, who was already asleep in their bedroom. There was something almost liberating about this small, secret vengeance, a private victory in the midst of her crumbling marriage. Sabrina responded almost immediately. "That makes sense. I was just surprised. It's really impressive that you take such personal interest in your patients. Tony is lucky to have such a dedicated partner." The words cut through Vivian's momentary mirth like a knife. Partner. The irony was bitter. "Just doing my job," she replied tersely, then set her phone aside, unable to continue the charade any longer. Lying on the couch in their home office, she couldn't bear to sleep beside Tony anymore. Vivian stared at the ceiling, contemplating her next steps. The initial shock of discovery had evolved into a cold, calculated determination. Tomorrow she would begin gathering financial records, as Angelica had advised. She needed proof that the clinic had been built with her inheritance, needed leverage for whatever came next. The following days passed in a strange, dual existence. On the surface, Vivian maintained her routine, seeing patients, managing the clinic, even making small talk with Tony over breakfast. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, she was systematically building her case. With Janice's discreet assistance, she began documenting Tony's schedule discrepancies, copying financial records, and searching for the original bank statements from when the clinic was founded. "I found something," Janice whispered one afternoon, slipping into Vivian's office during lunch break. She handed over a folder. It was in the old storage unit. Statements from 12 years ago, showing transfers from your personal account to pay for the initial clinic equipment. "Surety?" Vivian opened the folder with trembling hands. There they were, clear evidence of 5 separate transfers, totaling over $300,000, all from her personal account. The inheritance money from her father, carefully invested and then used to create what should have been her and Tony's shared dream. "Janice, you're incredible," Vivian breathed. "This is exactly what we needed." "There's more," Janice said, her expression brightening. "I remembered we keep digital backups of all patient scheduling on our secure server. I found evidence that Tony has been blocking off administrative time every Saturday for the past 8 months, but the satellite office records show he's only been seeing 1 patient during those blocks. Sabrina Payne." Vivian nodded grimly. "Perfect. Copy those records for me, please." A week after her discovery, Vivian met with Angelica again, bringing a portfolio of evidence that had grown impressively thick. "You've been thorough," Angelica noted with approval, reviewing the documents. "These bank statements are particularly valuable, and your receptionist's eyewitness account strengthens our position considerably." "What's next?" Vivian asked, feeling a strange mix of dread and anticipation. "I've drafted the divorce petition," Angelica replied, sliding a document across her desk. "Once you're ready, we'll file it and have him served. Given the evidence of infidelity and your significant contribution to the business, I'm confident we can negotiate a settlement that leaves you with full ownership of the clinic." Vivian skimmed the legal document, the formal language rendering her 15-year marriage into cold, clinical terms. Irreconcilable differences and breakdown of marital relations. It felt surreal, yet also oddly fitting. What they had shared had been reduced to transactions and divisions long before this paper made it official. "I want to wait a little longer," Vivian decided. "There's something I need to do first." Angelica raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Just don't take too long. And remember what I said about confrontation. Emotions can undermine even the strongest legal case." "I understand," Vivian assured her. "This isn't about emotion. It's about closure." On her way back to the clinic, Vivian's phone chimed with another text from Sabrina. "You won't believe this, but that rinse is amazing. My dental hygiene has never been better." Can I get another bottle when this one runs out? Vivian felt a twisted smile form on her lips. Absolutely, she texted back. Stop by any time. When she arrived at the clinic, Janice intercepted her with an urgent whisper. Dr. Malone, he's been on the phone for the last 20 minutes with her. I picked up line 2 for a call and heard them before they realized I was there. What did you hear? Vivian asked, keeping her voice level despite the sick feeling in her stomach. He told her he misses her and can't wait to see her this weekend. Then he started saying intimate things. Janice's cheeks flushed slightly. I hung up right away, but I thought you should know. Thank you, Janice, Vivian said quietly. You've been invaluable through all of this. It's the least I can do, Janice replied with unexpected fervor. What he's doing isn't right. My mom went through something similar with my dad years ago, and no one stood up for her. I won't be silent when I see it happening to someone else, especially someone who's been as good to me as you have. Vivian was touched by the young woman's loyalty. Your mother raised an exceptional daughter. Later that afternoon, as Vivian was finishing with her last patient, Tony appeared in her doorway. Hey, I was thinking we could try that new Italian place for dinner tonight. My treat. The casual invitation, as if nothing were wrong, as if he hadn't just been whispering sweet nothings to his mistress hours earlier, made something snap inside Vivian. For a moment, she imagined confronting him right there, throwing the evidence in his face, watching his expression crumble as he realized he'd been caught. Instead, she forced a smile. Sounds lovely. Let me finish up here and I'll meet you at home. When Tony left, Vivian sank into her chair, heart pounding. Patience, she reminded herself. The time for confrontation would come, but on her terms, when all the pieces were in place. That night at the restaurant, sitting across from her husband of 15 years, Vivian studied him as if seeing a stranger. How many dinners had they shared? How many confidences exchanged? Yet now, watching him sip his wine and chat about a difficult patient, she realized she didn't know this man at all. The Tony she had loved would never have betrayed her so callously, would never have risked everything they'd built together for a cheap affair. Is something wrong? Tony asked, noticing her distraction. You seem miles away. Vivian took a sip of her water. Just thinking about the Mitchell case. That root canal is going to be challenging. You've handled worse, he said with an encouraging smile. Remember that reconstruction we did on Mrs. Peterson last year? This is nothing compared to that. She nodded, forcing herself to engage in the professional discussion, all while thinking, he's so convincing, so natural. Has he always been this good at lying? Or is it a skill he's developed recently? The next day brought an unexpected opportunity. Tony announced over breakfast that he needed to attend an emergency dental conference in Boston the following weekend. A prominent speaker had been added to the program at the last minute, and he couldn't miss it. It's just for Saturday, he explained, not quite meeting her eyes. I'll be back Sunday morning. Vivian knew immediately what this meant. There was no emergency conference. This was cover for another rendezvous with Sabrina. Under normal circumstances, she might have offered to join him, might have suggested making a weekend of it in Boston. The fact that he didn't even consider she might want to come spoke volumes. That sounds important, she said mildly. Don't worry about your Saturday appointments. I can cover them again. Tony's relief was palpable. You're the best. I promise I'll make it up to you. I'm counting on it, Vivian replied, her tone pleasant, but her eyes cold. After Tony left for work, Vivian made 2 phone calls. The first was to Angelica, informing her that she was ready to move forward with the divorce petition. Have him served next Monday, she instructed. Not before. The second call was to a catering service, arranging for a special dinner to be delivered to their home on Friday evening. It's our anniversary, she lied smoothly. I want everything to be perfect. With those arrangements in place, Vivian called the clinic, informing them she needed to take a personal day. Then she drove to the bank where she and Tony kept their safety deposit box. Inside was jewelry, important documents, and a small collection of family heirlooms. including her grandmother's wedding ring and the watch her father had left her. Using her key, Vivian emptied the box of everything that belonged solely to her, leaving Tony's possessions untouched. It was a small step, but a necessary one. She would not risk losing these irreplaceable items in the chaos that would soon ensue. Her next stop was a small electronics store, where she purchased a discreet recording device and a high-definition camera. Angelica had advised documenting everything, and Vivian intended to be thorough. By the time Friday arrived, Vivian had executed every aspect of her plan with meticulous care. The divorce papers were prepared, the evidence secured, and her personal belongings protected. All that remained was the confrontation itself, the moment when Tony would finally realize that his careful house of cards had collapsed. The catering service delivered precisely at 6 o'clock, an elegant meal of Tony's favorites, complete with wine and candles. Vivian arranged everything beautifully, creating a scene of romantic perfection. In the living room, she set up the camera, carefully concealed but with a clear view of the dining area. On the kitchen counter, beside the bottle of Tony's preferred Cabernet, she placed a special edition, a crystal decanter containing water from the clinic's toilet, carefully tinted to match the wine's deep red color. When Tony arrived home, he found Vivian dressed elegantly, the table set for an intimate dinner. Soft music playing in the background. "What's all this?" he asked, genuine surprise in his voice. "I thought we deserved a special evening," Vivian replied with a warm smile. "We've both been working so hard lately. It's important to make time for us, don't you think?" For a moment, something like guilt flashed across Tony's face, quickly replaced by appreciation. "This is wonderful. Let me just shower quickly and change." While he was upstairs, Vivian positioned the recording device and checked that the camera was functioning properly. Then she poured herself a glass of the actual wine and, in a separate glass, served Tony his special drink from the decanter. When he returned, freshly showered and wearing the shirt she'd bought him last Christmas, they sat down to dinner. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily, discussing patients, remembering funny incidents from their early days together, even planning potential renovations to the clinic. If Vivian hadn't known better, she might have believed they were still the happy couple they appeared to be. After the main course, as Tony took another sip of his wine, Vivian decided it was time. "You know what would make this evening perfect?" she asked, her voice honey-sweet. "What's that?" Tony replied, smiling over the rim of his glass. "The truth," Vivian said, her expression unchanging but her tone suddenly ice-cold. Tony's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" Without a word, Vivian reached for her phone, pulled up a photo, and turned the screen toward him. It was an image of him and Sabrina, locked in an embrace outside the satellite office, her hands in his hair, his lips on her neck. The color drained from Tony's face. "Viv, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," she interrupted calmly. "You've always been good with explanations, creative even. But before you craft another lie, you should know that I have hundreds of messages between you two, financial records of your hotel stays, and an eyewitness who saw you together in your office. So perhaps, just this once, you could try honesty instead." Tony set down his glass, his hand visibly shaking. "It's not what you think. She came on to me. I tried to keep it professional, but—" "Stop!" Vivian cut him off again, unable to stomach more deception. "You've been seeing her for 8 months. 8 months, Tony. Planning rendezvous, sending explicit messages, betraying every vow we made. Don't insult me by claiming it was some momentary weakness." "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Long enough to document everything? Long enough to consult a lawyer? Long enough to realize our marriage is over?" Vivian's composure was remarkable even to herself. She felt detached, as if watching the scene unfold from a distance. Tony's shock gave way to a flash of anger. "You went through my phone? My messages? You spied on me?" "Oh, that's rich," Vivian laughed bitterly. "You're upset about invasion of privacy? After what you've done." "It was a mistake," Tony said, his tone shifting to contrition. A terrible mistake, but we can work through this. Couples therapy, a fresh start, whatever it takes. 15 years, Viv. We can't throw that away. You already did, Vivian replied simply. The moment you decided she was worth risking everything we built together. And speaking of what we built, you should know I've found the original bank statements proving the clinic was established with my inheritance. My lawyer has them now. At the mention of the clinic, something calculating entered Tony's expression. The clinic is marital property, regardless of where the initial investment came from. We're equal partners in that business. Not anymore, Vivian said, satisfaction coloring her voice. But don't worry about Sabrina feeling neglected with your reduced circumstances. I've been taking excellent care of her dental health. In fact, she's particularly fond of the special rinse I gave her. Tony frowned, confusion momentarily displacing his concern about the clinic. What rinse? Oh, I haven't told you about my new patient care innovation? Vivian picked up her wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid. It's quite similar to what you're drinking right now. Tony glanced down at his glass, then back at Vivian, uncomprehending. Water from the toilet bowl, she clarified, her voice eerily pleasant. Your precious Sabrina has been gargling with it nightly. She finds it quite effective, despite the unusual taste. And you seem to be enjoying your special beverage as well. Tony's eyes widened in horror as understanding dawned. He looked down at his half-empty glass and back at Vivian, his face contorting with disgust and rage. He shoved the glass away violently, sloshing the dark liquid across the pristine tablecloth. You're insane, he sputtered, standing up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. You actually gave a patient toilet water as mouthwash? Do you have any idea how many regulations that violates? You could lose your license. And you put that in my drink? What the hell is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Vivian repeated, her calm finally cracking. You destroy our marriage, betray my trust, plan to steal my father's legacy, and you have the audacity to ask what's wrong with me? Tony took a threatening step toward her, his hands clenched into fists, but Vivian merely gestured toward the living room. I wouldn't, if I were you. That camera has been recording our entire conversation, streaming directly to my lawyer's server. One move against me, and assault charges will be the least of your concerns. He froze, his gaze darting to the discreetly placed camera. The fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a cold calculation that Vivian recognized all too well. Tony was assessing his options, looking for leverage, for a way to salvage something from the wreckage. This isn't over, he said finally, his voice low. You want a fight? Fine. But don't think you'll walk away with everything. I helped build that practice. My reputation, my skills, half its value comes from me. Perhaps, Vivian conceded, but half of zero is still zero. And that's what the practice will be worth if I have to shut it down rather than let you profit from it. Think carefully about your next move, Tony. They stared at each other across the ruins of their anniversary dinner. 15 years of shared history dissolving in the toxic cloud of betrayal, revenge, and bitter regret. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight, Tony said finally. We can communicate through our lawyers from now on. Wait, Vivian said as he turned to leave. There's something you should know. The divorce petition will be delivered to your office on Monday. You might want to ensure you're not with a patient when it arrives. It could be awkward. Tony's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more before storming upstairs to pack an overnight bag. When the front door slammed behind him minutes later, Vivian remained seated at the dining table, surrounded by the elegant remnants of their last supper together. She should have felt triumphant, or at least relieved. But instead, a profound emptiness settled over her. The righteous anger that had sustained her through the confrontation ebbed away, leaving only the hollow reality of her situation. 15 years gone. Not just because of Tony's betrayal, but because of who he had revealed himself to be. Someone capable of such deception. such callous disregard for her feelings and their shared history. The man she had loved, had built a life with, had never truly existed. Vivian rose slowly, collecting the dishes with mechanical precision. As she poured the contents of Tony's glass down the drain, she allowed herself one small, grim smile. At least, he had gotten a taste of his own medicine. Literally. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Angelica. "Everything okay?" The recording came through clearly. "You handled that remarkably well." "It's done," Vivian replied simply. "He won't be back tonight." "Good. Get some rest. Monday will be challenging, but we're well prepared. You've done the hard part." Vivian wasn't so sure about that. The confrontation had been difficult, yes, but rebuilding her life from the ashes of this betrayal, that would be the true test. As she climbed the stairs to sleep alone in what had been their shared bedroom, Vivian wondered what Monday would bring. The official dissolution of her marriage, certainly, but perhaps also the first step toward something new, something solely her own. Before falling asleep, Vivian sent one final text to Janice. "It's over. He knows. Thank you for everything. We'll talk Monday." Janice's response came almost immediately. "I'm here for you. Whatever you need. You're the strongest person I know, Dr. Malone." Vivian set her phone aside, oddly comforted by the young receptionist's words. Strong. Yes, she had been strong through all of this. And she would need to be stronger still in the days to come. As she drifted toward sleep, Vivian found herself thinking not of Tony, but of her father. What would he have thought of all this? The inheritance he'd left her had created something valuable, something that had helped countless patients over the years. That, at least, remained untarnished by Tony's betrayal, and she would ensure it survived this storm, no matter what. In the darkness of her bedroom, Vivian made a silent promise. To her father, to herself, and to the future she would now forge alone. This was not the end. It was merely an unexpected detour on a journey that had always been hers to navigate. And navigate it she would, with the same determination that had carried her through these past terrible weeks. Monday would come, with its legal formalities and public acknowledgement of private pain. But for now, in these quiet hours, Vivian allowed herself to mourn what had been lost, while beginning to imagine what might yet be possible. Vivian awoke early on Monday morning, the gray dawn light filtering through her bedroom curtains. For a moment, disoriented by sleep, she reached across to Tony's side of the bed, before reality crashed back. The empty space beside her was now permanent, a physical manifestation of the void in her life. She rose methodically, showering and dressing with particular care. Today was not just another Monday. It was the day her divorce proceedings would officially begin. The day Tony would be served with papers that would formalize the end of their 15-year marriage. She chose a sleek charcoal suit, applying her makeup with precision, armor for the battle ahead. The kitchen felt cavernous without Tony's morning routine. No coffee brewing, no news playing softly on his tablet, no casual conversation about the day ahead. Vivian made a single cup of coffee and sat at the island counter, scrolling through her phone to distract herself from the silence. A text from Angelica appeared. "Process server will deliver papers to satellite office at 10 a.m. Stay focused today. Call me if you need anything." Vivian texted back a simple acknowledgement, then noticed another message. This one from Sabrina Payne, sent late last night. "Hi, Dr. Malone. Just wanted to check if you'll be at the office tomorrow. My rinse is almost gone, and I'm hoping to get more. It's working amazingly well." The audacity was almost impressive. Here was her husband's mistress, unknowingly asking the wronged wife for more toilet water to gargle with. Under different circumstances, it might have been darkly comical. Now, it just felt pathetic. "I'll be at the main office all day," Vivian responded coolly. "But I'm sure Dr. Tony can help you with a refill very soon." As she drove to the clinic, Vivian mentally prepared for the day ahead. Patients to see, staff to manage, and the inevitable fallout once Tony received the divorce papers. She had already warned Janice to expect potential drama, but the rest of the staff remained unaware of the impending explosion. The clinic was already bustling when she arrived. Janice gave her a meaningful look from the reception desk, followed by a subtle nod of encouragement. The young woman had proven to be an unexpected ally through this ordeal, her loyalty unwavering despite the awkward position it placed her in. "Morning, Dr. Malone," Janice said, handing over the day's schedule. "Your first patient is already in room 2. Oh, and these came for you." She discreetly slid a manila envelope across the counter. Vivian recognized Angelica's law firm logo in the corner. Inside would be her copy of the divorce petition, the official document ending her marriage. She tucked it into her bag without opening it. There would be time for that later. "Thank you, Janice," she said quietly. "If Dr. Tony calls or comes in, I'll let you know immediately," Janice assured her. The morning passed in a blur of routine procedures. A filling, 2 checkups, a consultation for veneers. Vivian moved through each appointment with professional detachment, her hands steady even as her mind occasionally wandered to the satellite office, where Tony would soon be receiving his copy of the divorce papers. At precisely 10:30, her phone vibrated with a text from Angelica. "Delivered. He's been served." Vivian excused herself between patients, stepping into her private office and closing the door. She sat at her desk, suddenly lightheaded, the reality of what was happening hitting her anew. It was done. Legally, officially done. The machinery of divorce had been set in motion and could not be easily stopped. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Dr. Malone?" It was Janice. "Dr. Tony is on line 1. He sounds upset." "Thank you, Janice. I'll take it." Vivian picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and pressed the blinking button. "This is Dr. Malone." "What the hell, Vivian?" Tony's voice was low, tightly controlled, but vibrating with anger. "You had me served at the office? In front of a patient? I specifically instructed the server to be discreet and to wait until you were between appointments," Vivian replied evenly. "If that didn't happen, I apologize for the unprofessionalism. But let's not pretend the timing is the real issue here. The real issue," Tony hissed, "is that you're trying to take everything. The clinic, the house, even my reputation with these ridiculous infidelity claims." "Ridiculous?" Vivian couldn't help but laugh. "We both know they're true, Tony. I have evidence, multiple forms of evidence. And as for taking everything, the clinic was built with my inheritance. The house was purchased primarily with my income, while you were still establishing your client base. I'm simply reclaiming what's rightfully mine." "We'll see what the judge says about that," Tony retorted. "I've already called Richard Kensington. He's taking my case." Vivian's stomach tightened at the name. Richard Kensington was one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the state, known for his scorched-earth approach to negotiations. This was Tony's way of telling her he wouldn't go quietly. "That's your prerogative," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Angelica will be in touch with him regarding discovery and deposition schedules. In the meantime, I suggest we maintain professional courtesy at the clinic. Our patients shouldn't suffer because of our personal issues." "Oh, that's rich coming from you," Tony sneered. "The woman who gave toilet water to a patient. Professional courtesy? You could lose your license for that stunt, Vivian. Did your precious Angelica tell you that?" Vivian felt a chill run through her. "Are you threatening me, Tony?" "Just stating facts. You want to play hardball? Fine. But remember, I have nothing to lose now. You've made sure of that." The line went dead before Vivian could respond. She sat motionless, the phone still pressed to her ear, as the implications of Tony's words sank in. He was right about one thing. What she'd done with Sabrina could indeed jeopardize her dental license if it ever came to light. It had been a moment of vindictive madness, satisfying in the moment, but potentially catastrophic for her career. Vivian finally set the phone down, her hand trembling slightly. She needed to talk to Angelica, needed to understand exactly how vulnerable this made her. But first, She had patients waiting. Compartmentalizing her personal crisis, Vivian returned to the examination rooms, proceeding through her afternoon appointments with forced normalcy. By 4 o'clock, she was exhausted from the effort of maintaining her professional facade while her personal life imploded. As her last patient of the day left, Vivian collapsed into her office chair, finally allowing herself a moment of weakness. The door opened quietly, and Janice appeared with a cup of tea. "I thought you might need this," she said, setting the steaming mug on Vivian's desk. "Rough day?" Vivian offered a weak smile. "That obvious, huh?" "Only to someone who's been watching closely." Janice hesitated, then asked, "Is there anything I can do to help?" The young woman's kindness nearly broke Vivian's composure. "You've already done so much, Janice. I don't know how I would have gotten through these past weeks without you." "You would have managed," Janice said with surprising conviction. "You're stronger than you realize, Dr. Malone." "Vivian," she corrected gently, "after everything, I think you've earned the right to use my first name when we're not with patients." Janice smiled, clearly pleased by this small acknowledgement of their evolving relationship. "Vivian, then, the reason I came in, besides the tea, is that Dr. Tony called the main office again. He's apparently coming in tomorrow to collect some personal items from his office. I thought you should know." Vivian nodded, grateful for the warning. "Thank you. I'll make sure I'm prepared for that." "Oh." After Janice left, Vivian called Angelica, explaining Tony's veiled threat about the mouthwash incident. "It's concerning, but not catastrophic," Angelica said after a moment's consideration. "First, he'd have to prove it happened, which would be difficult without Sabrina's cooperation. And I doubt he wants to involve her more directly in these proceedings. Second, even if he could prove it, the potential damage to his own reputation by revealing his affair with a patient would likely outweigh any satisfaction he'd get from seeing you disciplined. So you think it's an empty threat? Not entirely. He's angry and feeling cornered, which makes him dangerous, but it's more likely a negotiating tactic, trying to scare you into a more generous settlement." Angelica paused. "There is one way to neutralize this threat completely." "How?" "Get the mouthwash container back from Sabrina. Without physical evidence, it becomes her word against yours. And again, I doubt Tony wants her deposed as part of these proceedings." Vivian considered this. "She texted me last night asking for a refill. I could schedule her for a follow-up appointment." "Perfect," Angelica approved. "Just be careful. Don't create any new evidence or admit to anything in writing." Pete. After ending the call, Vivian texted Sabrina, "Happy to provide a refill of that special rinse. Can you come in for a quick follow-up this week? Also, please bring the empty bottle so we can properly recycle it." Sabrina's response came quickly. "That would be great. How about Wednesday afternoon? And yes, I'll bring the bottle. It's almost empty anyway. The stuff really works wonders." Vivian confirmed the appointment, a grim satisfaction settling over her. One small problem potentially solved. Now she just needed to navigate the hundreds of others that still loomed ahead. The drive home was lonely. The house even more so when she arrived. Vivian ordered takeout, unable to summon the energy to cook for one, and ate mechanically while reviewing case notes for the next day's patients. Work had always been her refuge, her passion. Now it felt like the only stable element in her rapidly disintegrating life. She was just about to turn in for the night when her phone rang. An unknown number. Vivian hesitated before answering. "Hello? Is this Dr. Vivian Malone?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Yes? Who's calling?" "This is Tracy Wilson, Tony's sister." The voice was tight, with barely controlled anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing to my brother?" Vivian hadn't spoken to Tracy in over a year. Their relationship had always been cordial, but distant, limited to holiday gatherings and occasional family events. "Tracy, I understand you're upset, but this is between Tony and me. He called me in tears, Vivian. In tears. Said you're trying to take everything, that you've turned vindictive and cruel. This isn't the woman I thought my brother married." The accusation stung, especially coming from someone who clearly didn't know the full story. Did Tony happen to mention why I filed for divorce? Did he tell you about his months-long affair with a patient? About the lies, the betrayal, the complete disregard for our 15 years together? Silence stretched across the line. Then, more subdued, he said there was someone else, but that it was a mistake, that he wanted to work things out. A mistake that lasted 8 months isn't a mistake, Tracy. It's a choice. Multiple choices, made day after day. Vivian's voice cracked slightly. I'm not being vindictive. I'm protecting what's mine. What I built before Tony. What I brought to our marriage. He's not entitled to my father's legacy just because he decided our vows were optional. Tracy sighed heavily. I don't want to be in the middle of this. Tony's my brother, and I love him. But I know he can be selfish. Just try to remember, there was good in your marriage too. Before all this, don't let the anger consume everything. After hanging up, Vivian sat in her dark kitchen, Tracy's words echoing in her mind. There had been good, great even, years of partnership, of shared dreams and achievements, of genuine love and respect, until there wasn't, until Tony had decided it wasn't enough. The next morning brought a new complication. As Vivian arrived at the clinic, Janice met her at the door, her expression troubled. Dr. Tony is already here, she whispered. He came in early, before anyone else arrived. He's in his office now, going through files. Vivian's heart raced. What kind of files? I'm not sure. He wouldn't let me see. Just said he was collecting things he needed. Alarm bells rang in Vivian's mind. What if he was taking patient records, financial documents, evidence that could help his case or hurt hers? She strode purposefully toward Tony's office, knocking once before pushing the door open. He looked up, startled, a stack of folders in his hands. What are you doing? Vivian demanded, scanning the room. His desk was in disarray, drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the surface. Getting my things, Tony replied defensively. My case files, my research notes. They're mine. Nothing leaves this office without proper documentation, Vivian stated firmly. Patient records stay here. Financial documents stay here. Your personal effects, fine. But anything related to the practice remains. Tony's expression darkened. You don't get to dictate terms, Vivian. This practice is as much mine as yours. Not according to the founding documents, which clearly show my initial investment. She crossed her arms. If you want to remove official documents, we can have our lawyers present to oversee the process. Otherwise, put them back. For a tense moment, Vivian thought he might refuse. Then, with deliberate slowness, Tony returned the folders to the cabinet. This isn't over. Clearly. Vivian maintained her position by the door. Now, what else were you planning to take? Under her watchful eye, Tony collected only personal items. Framed certificates, reference books he'd purchased, a few photos. The entire process took less than 30 minutes, but felt like hours, the air between them thick with unspoken accusations and regrets. As Tony prepared to leave, box of belongings in his arms, he paused. You know, I did love you, Viv, despite what you think. Not enough, she replied simply. Not enough to honor your vows? To respect what we built? To be honest when things changed for you? That's not love, Tony. That's convenience. He had no response to that, just a slight tightening of his jaw before he walked out. Vivian remained in his office after he left, surveying the space that had been Tony's domain for so many years. Half-empty bookshelves, vacant spots on the walls where his diplomas had hung, desk drawers ajar. It looked abandoned, transitional, like their marriage had become. The rest of the day passed in a blur of appointments and administrative tasks. Vivian worked through lunch, grateful for the distraction of root canals and crown preparations, of insurance forms and supply orders. Anything to keep her mind occupied, to prevent it from wandering to the painful reality of her personal life. As the day wound down, Janice appeared in her doorway again. Dr. Malone, Vivian, I was wondering if you'd like to grab dinner? You shouldn't be alone tonight, and I thought maybe some company would help? The invitation caught Vivian off guard. Their relationship had evolved beyond employer-employee during this crisis, but socializing outside work still felt like crossing a boundary. Yet the prospect of another solitary evening in her empty house was undeniably bleak. That's very kind of you, Janice. I'd like that. They went to a small Italian restaurant several blocks from the clinic, one Vivian had never visited with Tony. Over pasta and a shared bottle of wine, the conversation flowed surprisingly easily, moving from clinic matters to more personal topics. How did you decide to become a dentist? Janice asked, twirling linguine around her fork. My father, Vivian replied, smiling at the memory. He had terrible teeth. Never saw a dentist until he was in his 30s. Couldn't afford it growing up. When he finally did, it changed his life, not just practically, but emotionally. He always said a good smile gave him confidence, opened doors. He wanted me to have that same impact on others. That's beautiful, Janice said softly. Is that why you used his inheritance to start the clinic? Vivian nodded. It felt right, continuing his legacy that way. He worked so hard his whole life, saved everything he could. When he passed, he left me enough to really make a difference. Her expression clouded. I never imagined I'd be fighting to keep it. You will, Janice said with surprising certainty. Keep it, I mean. You're going to win this, Vivian. I hope so. But even if I do, Vivian sighed, setting down her fork. The clinic won't be the same. Too many memories, too much history with Tony embedded in every room. Then change it, Janice suggested. Renovate, rebrand, make it fully yours. Create something new from what remains. The suggestion was so simple, yet so profound, that Vivian felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. You know, that's not a bad idea. A fresh start. As they finished their meal, Vivian found herself genuinely smiling, genuinely engaged in the moment rather than dwelling on her troubles. Janice was good company, intelligent, perceptive, with an understated wit that Vivian had never fully appreciated in their professional interactions. Thank you for this, Vivian said as they walked to their cars afterward. I needed it more than I realized. Any time, Janice replied warmly. That's what friends are for. Friends. The word felt right, unexpected though it was. In the wreckage of her marriage, Vivian was discovering that other relationships still remained, still mattered. It was a small comfort, but a genuine one. Wednesday arrived quickly, bringing with it Sabrina's scheduled appointment. Vivian had prepared carefully, ensuring she would handle the follow-up personally. The plan was simple: retrieve the bottle, dispose of the evidence, and neutralize at least one of Tony's potential weapons against her. When Sabrina entered the examination room, Vivian was struck again by how young and beautiful she was. Probably 15 years younger than herself, with the confident air of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. Had Tony been flattered by her attention, intoxicated by the admiration of someone who looked at him with fresh eyes, unmarred by the familiarity of a long marriage? Dr. Malone, so nice to see you again, Sabrina said brightly, setting her purse on the counter. I brought the empty bottle like you asked. Wonderful, Vivian replied, maintaining her professional smile. Let's check your teeth first, see how the treatment has been working. The examination was brief but thorough. Surprisingly, Sabrina's oral hygiene did appear improved. The placebo effect in action, perhaps, or simply more attentive brushing and flossing due to the perceived special treatment. Everything looks excellent, Vivian confirmed, removing her gloves. Did you bring the bottle for the refill? Yes, right here. Sabrina retrieved a small amber bottle from her purse, the one Vivian had filled with toilet water weeks earlier. It really has made a difference, though the taste is still pretty awful. The most effective treatments often are, Vivian remarked, taking the bottle and examining it as if checking the label. Unfortunately, we're actually out of stock at the moment. Our supplier is backed up with orders. Oh. Sabrina's disappointment was evident. Any idea when you'll get more? Hard to say. I can put you on the waiting list? Vivian pocketed the bottle casually. In the meantime, continue your regular oral hygiene routine. Your teeth are looking wonderful. Sabrina nodded, then hesitated, a strange expression crossing her face. Dr. Malone, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but have you spoken with Tony, Dr. Tony, recently? He's been acting strange the past few days. Cancelled our plans last minute, barely returning texts. The audacity of the question left Vivian momentarily speechless. Here was her husband's mistress, asking the wife for insights into his behavior, apparently unaware that Vivian knew everything. I believe he's been dealing with some personal matters, Vivian replied carefully, a tight smile fixed on her face. Legal issues, primarily. Oh, Sabrina's eyes widened slightly. Nothing serious, I hope. Just a divorce, Vivian said, her tone deliberately casual as she made a note in Sabrina's chart. These things happen. A divorce? Sabrina repeated, her voice rising slightly. He never mentioned… I knew he was married, but he said it was complicated, that you two were essentially separated already. Vivian looked up, meeting Sabrina's confused gaze directly. Is that what he told you? How interesting. We've been living together, working together, and planning our 15th anniversary trip until quite recently. But I suppose complicated is one way to describe it. Understanding dawned slowly on Sabrina's face, followed by mortification as she realized who she was speaking to and what Vivian knew. You know about you and Tony? Yes, for some time now. Vivian kept her voice level, professional, even as satisfaction bloomed at Sabrina's visible discomfort. 8 months, to be precise. Saturday appointments at the satellite office, afternoon rendezvous when the clinic is closed, romantic getaways disguised as dental conferences. Quite thorough documentation, actually. Sabrina paled, reaching for her purse with trembling hands. I should go. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. He said things were over between you, that you stayed together just for the practice. He lied, Vivian stated simply. To both of us, it seems. Sabrina stood, clearly eager to escape this increasingly awkward situation. I never would have, if I'd known. I'm not that kind of person. And yet, here we are. Vivian rose as well, opening the door to the examination room. Take care of those teeth, Sabrina. Oh, and perhaps find a new dentist. I hear Dr. Reynolds across town is excellent. After Sabrina's hasty departure, Vivian retreated to her office, the incriminating bottle safely in her possession. She locked it in her desk drawer, a weight lifted from her shoulders. One problem solved, countless others remaining. Her phone buzzed with a text from Angelica. Court date set for preliminary hearing. 3 weeks from today. How are you holding up? Vivian typed back. Better than expected. Retrieved the evidence. Moving forward one day at a time. As she prepared for her next patient, Vivian reflected on the strange encounter with Sabrina. The woman had seemed genuinely shocked, genuinely remorseful upon learning the truth. Had she really believed Tony's lies about a marriage in name only? Or was that just what she needed to tell herself to justify the affair? Either way, it didn't matter now. The truth was out, the damage done. All that remained was to salvage what she could from the wreckage and begin rebuilding her life, one appointment, one day, one small victory at a time. 3 weeks passed with agonizing slowness. Vivian fell into a new routine of sorts, working long hours at the clinic, meeting regularly with Angelica to prepare for the upcoming hearing, and spending occasional evenings with Janice, whose friendship had become an unexpected lifeline. The preliminary hearing loomed like a storm on the horizon. Though Angelica assured her it was largely procedural, Vivian couldn't help feeling apprehensive. It would be her first time seeing Tony in a formal legal setting, the first public acknowledgement that their marriage was truly ending. Try to get some sleep tonight, Angelica advised during their final preparation meeting. First hearings are stressful, but remember, we're well prepared. The financial documentation is solid. The evidence of infidelity is compelling, and your position is strong." Vivian nodded, though sleep seemed unlikely. "What should I expect from Tony and his attorney?" "Richard Kensington likes to posture," Angelica replied, her expression hardening slightly. "He'll make aggressive claims about joint ownership of the practice, try to undermine the inheritance evidence, possibly attempt to paint you as emotionally unstable due to the mouthwash incident. But without evidence." "Exactly. Without physical evidence, it's merely an allegation that would be difficult to prove and potentially damaging to Tony's own case if Sabrina were deposed." Angelica gathered her papers. "Just maintain your composure tomorrow, no matter what. The judge will be watching both of you closely, forming first impressions that can influence the entire proceedings." That night, as predicted, Vivian barely slept. She lay awake, rehearsing responses to potential questions, imagining various scenarios, and trying to prepare herself emotionally for seeing Tony across a courtroom. When her alarm finally sounded at 6, she was already showered and dressed in the conservative navy suit she and Angelica had agreed upon. Professional, serious, but not overtly severe. The courthouse was busy when she arrived, people hurrying through security checkpoints and down long corridors to various proceedings. Angelica met her at the entrance to Courtroom C, immaculately dressed in a tailored charcoal pantsuit, emanating confidence. "Ready?" she asked quietly. Vivian took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." They entered the courtroom together, taking seats at one of the tables facing the judge's bench. The room was smaller than Vivian had imagined, more intimate, which somehow made it more intimidating. Other cases were being heard first, brief proceedings dealing with scheduling and procedural matters that Vivian barely registered as she waited for her own case to be called. Then suddenly, Tony was there, walking down the center aisle with Richard Kensington at his side. He looked thinner than when she'd last seen him, his normally immaculate appearance slightly diminished, his suit a bit loose, dark circles under his eyes. Their gazes met briefly before he looked away, taking a seat at the opposing table. "Malone versus Malone," the clerk called eventually. Vivian rose on unsteady legs, following Angelica to stand before Judge Eleanor Harmon, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with piercing gray eyes and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. The proceedings began with formal introductions and statements of representation. Then Kensington launched immediately into his opening position, aggressive as Angelica had predicted, claiming that the dental practice was marital property regardless of initial funding source, asserting Tony's right to half its value, and requesting temporary alimony due to income disparity since Tony's departure from the main clinic. Angelica responded with cool precision, presenting the inheritance documents and bank records showing Vivian's sole financial contribution to the clinic's founding, countering the alimony request with evidence of Tony's continuing income from the satellite office, and introducing the infidelity evidence with professional detachment that somehow made it more damning. Throughout these exchanges, Vivian maintained the composed expression Angelica had coached her on, even as Kensington attempted to paint her as vindictive and irrational, making vague references to unprofessional behavior without explicitly mentioning the mouthwash incident. Judge Harmon listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions of both attorneys. Her expression revealed little, but Vivian thought she detected a flicker of disapproval when the judge reviewed the text messages between Tony and Sabrina. "I've heard enough for today," Judge Harmon announced finally. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm issuing a temporary order as follows. Dr. Vivian Malone will retain primary control of the main dental practice pending final settlement. Dr. Anthony Malone will continue operations at the satellite office, with all profits from both locations to be documented and held in escrow until property division is finalized. Neither party shall dispose of any marital assets without court approval." She fixed both Vivian and Tony with a stern gaze. "I strongly encourage you to reach a settlement agreement before the next hearing. Divorces are painful enough without prolonged litigation. Consider mediation as an alternative to further court proceedings. With that, she called the next case, and Vivian found herself being ushered from the courtroom by Angelica, a curious numbness spreading through her body. "That went well," Angelica murmured as they exited into the hallway. "The temporary order favors our position substantially. Kensington knows it too. Look at his face." Vivian glanced back to see Tony and his attorney in heated discussion, Kensington's expression tight with frustration. "What happens now?" she asked, still feeling oddly detached from the proceedings that would determine her future. "Now we leverage this momentum toward a settlement. Kensington will bluster and threaten, but he knows their position is weak. With the judge leaning our way on the clinic ownership, they'll eventually come to the table with more reasonable terms." As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Vivian spotted Tony following several paces behind, alone now. Their eyes met again, and this time he approached, Kensington nowhere in sight. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. "Just for a minute." Angelica gave Vivian a questioning look. "You don't have to." "It's okay," Vivian assured her. "I'll meet you outside." When Angelica had moved a discreet distance away, Tony spoke again. "You looked good in there. Composed. I was impressed." "What do you want, Tony?" Vivian asked tiredly, in no mood for small talk. He ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that once she'd found endearing. "This is getting ugly fast. The lawyers, the court. It's not how I wanted this to go." "How did you want it to go, exactly? You'd continue your affair indefinitely while I remained oblivious? Or I'd discover it and graciously step aside, giving you half of everything I built? I made mistakes, Viv. Terrible mistakes that I regret every day. But dragging this through the courts will only make everything worse for both of us." Vivian studied his face, the face she'd woken up beside for 15 years, now strangely altered by the knowledge of his betrayal. "What are you suggesting?" "A private settlement. No more lawyers, no more hearings. We sit down like rational adults and divide things fairly. You keep the main clinic, I take the satellite office. We split the house value. Clean, simple, dignified." For a moment, Vivian was tempted. The prospect of avoiding months of legal battles, of putting this painful chapter behind her more quickly, held undeniable appeal. But something in Tony's tone gave her pause. "Why now? What's changed since you threatened to take everything?" Tony hesitated, his gaze sliding away from hers. "I've had time to reflect, to recognize my part in destroying what we had, and to acknowledge that fighting over assets isn't worth the emotional toll." It sounded reasonable, even contrite. But after 15 years, Vivian knew Tony's tells, the slight tension around his mouth, the way his right hand opened and closed at his side. He wasn't being entirely truthful. "Or," she countered, "you've realized your legal position is weaker than you thought, and you're trying to avoid a settlement dictated by the court." His expression hardened momentarily before he recovered his conciliatory tone. "Think what you want, Viv. I'm trying to do the right thing here." "The right thing would have been honoring our marriage vows," Vivian replied quietly. "But it's a bit late for that. Any settlement discussions can go through our attorneys. Goodbye, Tony." She walked away before he could respond, joining Angelica outside the courthouse. As they descended the steps together, Vivian recounted the brief conversation. "Classic Kensington tactic," Angelica noted. "When the legal approach isn't working, try to circumvent counsel and negotiate directly. You were right to decline." "He seemed almost desperate," Vivian mused, "like there was something he wasn't telling me." "There probably is. Let me do some digging. See if there's anything we're missing about the satellite office or his current financial situation." Back at the clinic, Vivian found herself in a strange state of emotional limbo. The hearing had gone well, objectively speaking, yet the reality of sitting in a courtroom, formally dissolving her marriage, left her feeling hollowed out. She moved through her afternoon appointments mechanically, grateful for the familiar routines that required minimal emotional engagement. As the last patient departed, Janice appeared in her doorway. "How did it go?" she asked tentatively. Vivian managed a weak smile. "About as well as could be expected. The judge seems to be leaning our way on the clinic ownership." "That's great news!" Janice's enthusiasm faltered as she registered Vivian's subdued demeanor. "Isn't it?" "It is," Vivian confirmed, gathering her things. "It's just strange. Sitting there, listening to 15 years of marriage being reduced to asset columns and legal arguments." Janice nodded sympathetically. "I can't imagine. Are you heading home now?" "I should. But the thought of that empty house." Vivian trailed off, the prospect suddenly unbearable. "We could grab dinner again," Janice suggested. "Or there's a film festival at the Arts Center tonight. Foreign films, but they have subtitles." The offer was tempting, far more so than an evening alone with her thoughts. "That actually sounds perfect." The film was a French drama about a woman rebuilding her life after loss. Perhaps too on the nose given Vivian's circumstances, but beautiful nonetheless. Afterward, they discussed it over late dinner at a small bistro, the conversation flowing easily between them. "I never asked," Vivian said, as they lingered over coffee, "about your interest in dentistry. You mentioned wanting to go to dental school someday?" Janice nodded, a hint of color touching her cheeks. "It's been a dream since high school, actually. My family couldn't afford it then. Single mom, 3 kids. You know how it is. I've been saving, taking prerequisites at community college when I can. But at this rate, I'll be 40 before I finish." "It's never too late," Vivian said, surprised by how much she wanted to encourage this young woman's ambitions. "Some of the best dentists I know started later in life. They bring a maturity and perspective that 20-somethings often lack." "That's kind of you to say." Janice smiled, her expression brightening. "Working at the clinic has only confirmed it's what I want to do. Watching you with patience, seeing the difference you make, it's inspiring." The compliment warmed Vivian unexpectedly. "You'd make an excellent dentist. You already have the chairside manner down. Patients always comment on how comfortable you make them feel." "Really?" Janice looked genuinely pleased. "That means a lot coming from you." As they walked to their cars afterward, Vivian found herself reluctant to end the evening. The prospect of returning to her empty house seemed even more desolate after these hours of companionship and conversation. "Thank you for this," she said, as they reached the parking lot. "It was exactly what I needed today." "Anytime," Janice replied warmly. "That's what friends are for, right? Friends." The word still surprised Vivian, though less so than before. Their relationship had evolved naturally from professional to personal in these weeks of crisis, crossing boundaries that once seemed immutable. And she was grateful for it, for this unexpected connection that had emerged from the wreckage of her marriage. The following morning brought another development. Angelica called early, her voice charged with excitement. "I think I know why Tony was so eager for a private settlement," she announced without preamble. "My investigator found something interesting about the satellite office." "What is it?" Vivian asked, instantly alert. "He's been negotiating to sell it. There's a small dental group looking to expand into that area, and they've made an offer well above market value due to the established patient base." Vivian processed this information. "So he wanted to secure ownership before the sale went through?" "Exactly. By settling privately, he hoped to walk away with full rights to the satellite office, then flip it for a substantial profit without having to share with you. The revelation shouldn't have hurt, not after everything else Tony had done. But somehow, this calculated financial maneuver felt like yet another betrayal. Can he do that? Not now that we know about it, Angelica assured her. The judge's order specifically prohibits disposing of any marital assets without court approval. The satellite office, regardless of who ultimately owns it, is still considered marital property until the divorce is finalized. So, what's our next move? We use this as leverage. If he wants the sale to go through, and based on the numbers my investigator found, he very much does, he'll need to offer significant concessions on other aspects of the settlement. Vivian considered this tactical advantage, a strange sense of vindication washing over her. "I want the house," she decided suddenly, "and no claims against the main clinic. Ever." "That's reasonable given the circumstances," Angelica agreed. "I'll draft a proposal and reach out to Kensington today. This could significantly accelerate our timeline." After ending the call, Vivian sat on the edge of her bed, contemplating this new development. Tony had been planning his exit strategy all along, looking to profit from the divorce rather than merely survive it. The calculated nature of it confirmed what she'd begun to suspect, that the man she'd married, the man she thought she knew intimately, had been at least partly a fabrication all along. At the clinic that day, Vivian found herself watching the staff interactions with new awareness. Who else might not be what they seemed? Who else might be harboring secrets or hidden agendas? The paranoia was unproductive, she knew, but difficult to shake after having her trust so profoundly violated. Yet, amid this suspicious scrutiny, Janice remained a constant, her presence a reassuring reminder that genuine connections were still possible. The young woman moved efficiently through her receptionist duties, her warm manner with patients unchanged, her quiet support of Vivian unwavering. During a rare lull between appointments, Vivian called Janice into her office. "I've been thinking about something," she began hesitantly. "It's still in the early stages, but I'm considering renovating the clinic once the divorce is finalized. A fresh start, new branding, possibly even expanding our services." Janice's eyes lit up. "That sounds incredible. What kind of changes are you thinking?" "Modern equipment upgrades, certainly. Perhaps a more comprehensive approach to care, adding specialized services we currently refer out. And," Vivian paused, the idea forming as she spoke, "possibly a mentorship program for aspiring dental professionals. Scholarships? Apprenticeships? That sort of thing." "That would be amazing," Janice said, her enthusiasm evident. "So many people want to enter the field but face financial barriers. A program like that could change lives." "It could," Vivian agreed, watching Janice's animated response with growing certainty about the path forward. "I'd like your input as I develop the concept further. Your perspective would be valuable." "I'd be honored," Janice replied sincerely. "Whatever you need." The conversation left Vivian feeling energized, the future suddenly less bleak than it had seemed hours earlier. Yes, her marriage was over. Yes, the man she'd built a life with had betrayed her in the most painful way possible. But perhaps, from these ashes, something new and meaningful could emerge, a vision that was entirely her own, unburdened by compromise or shared ownership. That afternoon, Angelica called again. "Kensington responded to our proposal," she reported. "They're interested, but countering with some modifications. Tony wants accelerated court approval for the satellite office sale, plus 20% of the proceeds from the main clinic, if you ever decide to sell it." Vivian considered this. "The satellite sale approval is fine, but no claims on the main clinic. That's non-negotiable." "I'll push back on that point," Angelica agreed. "But this is progress. They're coming to the table much sooner than I expected." "How soon could this all be finalized?" "If we reach agreement on the major terms, we could have a settlement ready for the judge's approval within 2 weeks, potentially. Much faster than the months of litigation we were preparing for." 2 weeks. The timeline was both terrifying and exhilarating. In 14 days, her 15-year marriage could be legally dissolved, the clinic unquestionably hers, the future wide open before her. "Let's do it," Vivian decided. "Push for the terms we discussed, but let's get this resolved." The next day brought an unexpected complication. Vivian arrived at the clinic to find Janice looking troubled at the reception desk. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately concerned by the young woman's expression. "Sabrina Payne called this morning," Janice replied quietly. "She sounded upset, said she needs to speak with you urgently about a dental emergency. She wouldn't give details, just insisted on talking to you directly." Vivian felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Did she say anything else?" "No, but," Janice hesitated, "she mentioned something about a special treatment you provided. It sounded off. The mouthwash. It had to be. But Vivian had retrieved the bottle, eliminated the physical evidence. What could Sabrina want now? If she calls again, put her through to me, Vivian instructed, trying to mask her concern. And thank you for the warning. In her office, Vivian called Angelica immediately, explaining the situation. It could be nothing, Angelica said, though her tone suggested she didn't believe that. But be extremely careful in any conversation with her. Don't admit anything. Don't apologize for anything. And ideally, record the call if she contacts you again. Vivian agreed, then spent the morning in a state of heightened anxiety, jumping slightly whenever the phone rang. Finally, around 11, Janice buzzed her intercom. Dr. Malone, Sabrina Payne is on line 2 for you. Taking a deep breath, Vivian pressed the recording button on her desk phone, a feature they used for documenting complex treatment discussions with patients, and picked up the call. This is Dr. Malone. Dr. Malone? Sabrina's voice was tight, controlled. I need to speak with you about the mouthwash you gave me. The special formula. Vivian maintained her professional tone. Yes, I recall providing you with a rinse. Is there a problem? I think we both know what the problem is, Sabrina replied, a hint of anger breaking through her composure. After our last appointment, when I realized who you really were, I became suspicious. I had the liquid tested at a lab where my friend works. Vivian's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. And what did this testing reveal? That it wasn't mouthwash at all. That it contained… Sabrina's voice faltered momentarily. Biological waste. Human waste. You gave me toilet water to gargle with, didn't you? As some sick revenge for my relationship with Tony. The direct accusation hung in the air between them. Vivian chose her words with extreme care. That's quite an extraordinary claim, Ms. Payne. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. I have the lab report to prove it. If true, this was potentially disastrous. But Vivian knew better than to admit anything, especially on a recorded line. I'm sorry you're upset, but I categorically deny any improper treatment. The rinse provided was a standard formulation used with multiple patients. Bullshit, Sabrina snapped. I know what you did, and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too, unless… Unless what, Ms. Payne? Unless you're willing to compensate me for this assault, this violation of trust. $50,000. And I'll destroy the lab report. Forget this ever happened. Blackmail. It was actually blackmail. Vivian felt a bizarre urge to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Her husband's mistress was now attempting to extort money from her over the toilet water incident. Let me be very clear, Ms. Payne, Vivian said, her voice hardening. I deny your allegations completely. Furthermore, what you're attempting now constitutes blackmail, which is a criminal offense. If you pursue this matter, be prepared for consequences far beyond our current situation. Sabrina's response was immediate and venomous. You think I'm scared of you? You're the one who should be terrified. When the dental board hears about this, when the dental board hears that my husband's mistress is making unfounded allegations against me amid divorce proceedings, Vivian interrupted coolly. I believe they'll see this for exactly what it is, a desperate attempt at extortion. Now, is there anything else regarding your actual dental care that you'd like to discuss? Otherwise, I suggest you find another dental provider going forward. The line went silent for several seconds before Sabrina responded, her voice lower now, dangerous. This isn't over, Dr. Malone. Not by a long shot. The call ended abruptly. Vivian sat motionless, the implications of this new threat washing over her in waves of anxiety. She saved the recording, then immediately called Angelica again, relaying the conversation verbatim. This is concerning, Angelica admitted after listening to Vivian's account. If she actually has a lab report, could she have somehow kept some of the liquid? Saved it somewhere? Vivian asked, mentally retracing her interactions with Sabrina. Possibly. Or she's bluffing. hoping you'll panic and pay. Either way, we need to prepare for her next move." Angelica paused, thinking. First, absolutely no further contact with her. If she calls again, have your receptionist take a message, nothing more. Second, I'll draft a cease and desist letter regarding the blackmail attempt. And third, we need to accelerate the settlement with Tony if possible. The sooner this divorce is finalized, the better. Vivian agreed to all 3 points, though a persistent knot of dread had formed in her stomach. Just when things had seemed to be moving in a positive direction, this new threat emerged, one with potential professional consequences far beyond the divorce itself. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety and forced normalcy. Vivian maintained her professional demeanor with patience while internally cycling through worst-case scenarios. Would Sabrina really go to the dental board? What if she went to the media instead? How would Vivian defend herself if formal charges were brought? By closing time, she was exhausted from the constant tension, her neck and shoulders aching with stress. Janice, perceptive as always, noticed her strained expression. "Rough day?" she asked gently as they prepared to lock up. "You could say that," Vivian replied, managing a weak smile. "Nothing a hot bath and a glass of wine won't help." Janice hesitated, then said, "I know it's not my place, but that woman who called, Sabrina, she came by while you were with your last patient, dropped off an envelope for you. I put it on your desk." Vivian froze. "She was here? In person?" Janice nodded. She seemed different from when she was a patient. Angry, cold. Said it was important you get this immediately. With a sense of foreboding, Vivian returned to her office. The envelope sat on her desk, plain white, unmarked except for her name written in an elegant cursive. She opened it carefully, as if it might contain something dangerous. Inside was a single sheet of paper, what appeared to be a laboratory report, with technical language and chemical compounds listed in neat rows. At the bottom, highlighted in yellow, was a conclusion stating that the sample contained human waste materials consistent with toilet water. Beneath the report was a handwritten note. "This is copy number 1 of 3. Think carefully about your next move, Dr. Malone. SP." Vivian sank into her chair, the paper trembling in her hands. This wasn't a bluff. Sabrina had evidence, real, documented evidence of what she'd done. Evidence that could end her career, destroy everything she'd fought to protect. The question now was simple, yet terrifying. What would Sabrina do next? The lab report lay on Vivian's desk like a ticking bomb, its implications expanding with each passing moment. She stared at it, her mind racing through scenarios, each more catastrophic than the last. Her dental license revoked. The clinic shuttered. Her professional reputation, built over decades of meticulous care and dedication, destroyed by a single act of vindictive madness. "Dr. Malone?" Janice's voice at the doorway startled her. "Is everything okay? You look pale." Vivian quickly folded the paper, sliding it into her desk drawer. "I'm fine. Just processing some difficult news." Janice stepped into the office, concern etched across her features. "Is there anything I can do to help?" For a moment, Vivian considered confiding in her, unburdening herself of this terrible secret that now threatened everything. But she couldn't bring herself to tarnish Janice's image of her, couldn't bear to see the inevitable disappointment in the young woman's eyes. "Not at the moment, but thank you," Vivian replied, forcing a smile. "I just need some time to think." After Janice reluctantly departed, Vivian called Angelica again, her voice low and urgent as she described the lab report. "This changes things," Angelica admitted, the concern evident in her tone. "If she has legitimate evidence, her threat carries real weight." "What are my options?" Vivian asked, struggling to keep the desperation from her voice. "Legally, we maintain our position that any allegations are unfounded, potentially defamatory, and connected to her relationship with your husband. We counter-threaten legal action for blackmail and harassment. And practically?" Angelica sighed. "Practically, we need to resolve this before it escalates further. If this went public, or to the dental board, even if you eventually cleared your name, the damage would be substantial. So I should pay her? The very thought made Vivian's stomach turn. I didn't say that, Angelica replied carefully. But we need to find a resolution that neutralizes this threat permanently. After ending the call, Vivian sat alone in her darkening office, the weight of her impulsive action crushing down on her. The toilet water prank had seemed like justified vengeance in the moment, a small measure of satisfaction amid the devastating betrayal. Now it threatened to cost her everything. She drove home in a fog of anxiety, barely registering the familiar streets and turns. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like another trap, filled with memories of Tony and haunted by the specter of her uncertain future. Sleep eluded her that night, her mind cycling endlessly through the same questions. Should she pay Sabrina's blackmail demand? Fight the allegations? Try to negotiate some middle ground? By dawn, she was no closer to an answer, but had reached one clear conclusion. She couldn't face this alone anymore. The clinic opened at 8, but Vivian arrived at 7, needing the quiet hour to compose herself before patients began arriving. To her surprise, Janice's car was already in the parking lot. Inside, she found the young receptionist organizing files at the front desk, a cup of coffee steaming beside her. "You're early," Vivian observed, trying to sound normal despite her sleepless night. "I wanted to get a head start on the insurance claims," Janice explained, then hesitated. "And honestly, I was worried about you after yesterday." The genuine concern in her voice broke something in Vivian, a wall she hadn't realized she'd been maintaining. "Can we talk? In my office?" Once seated with the door closed, Vivian found herself uncharacteristically uncertain where to begin. "What I'm about to tell you is complicated and not flattering to me, but I need someone I can trust, and you've proven yourself to be that person over these past weeks." Janice nodded solemnly. "Whatever it is, I'm here to listen." Taking a deep breath, Vivian recounted the entire toilet water incident, from her initial vengeful impulse to Sabrina's current blackmail attempt. She held nothing back, acknowledging the professional irresponsibility of her actions while explaining the emotional context that had driven her to such an extreme. As she spoke, she watched Janice's expression carefully, bracing for disgust or disappointment. Instead, she saw something unexpected, understanding, mixed with concern, but no judgment. "I know it was wrong," Vivian concluded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Unprofessional, unethical, potentially illegal. I let my pain and anger override everything I stand for as a healthcare provider, and now it could cost me everything." Janice was quiet for a long moment, considering. "May I see the lab report?" Vivian retrieved it from her drawer, sliding it across the desk. Janice studied it carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm not an expert," she said finally, "but something about this seems off. The formatting, these reference numbers, they don't look like standard lab documentation." Vivian leaned forward, looking at the paper with fresh eyes. "What do you mean?" "I used to process lab reports for a medical office before working here," Janice explained. "They typically have specific headers, batch numbers, chain of custody information. This looks, I don't know, like someone created it using a template." Hope flickered briefly in Vivian's chest. "You think it might be fake?" "It's possible, or at least modified from something else." Janice looked up, meeting Vivian's gaze directly. "Does Sabrina have the technical knowledge to get something like this tested properly? To understand what the results would mean?" "She mentioned a friend at a lab," Vivian recalled. "But you're right. The proper analysis would require specific equipment, protocols." "I think you need to call her bluff," Janice said with surprising confidence. "Not by confronting her directly, but by accelerating your divorce settlement and removing any leverage she thinks she has." The suggestion aligned with Angelica's advice, but hearing it from Janice somehow made it more concrete, more actionable. "You're right. The sooner this divorce is finalized, the less connected I am to both of them." Janice nodded encouragingly. "And in the meantime, we prepare for any possible fallout. Document everything. Secure patient testimonials about your professional care. Create a narrative that makes her allegations seem like what they are. A desperate attempt to extort money amid a messy divorce." "We," Vivian repeated, surprised by the plural. "Of course," Janice replied without hesitation. "I'm not going anywhere, Dr. Malone. We'll face this together." The simple declaration of loyalty brought unexpected tears to Vivian's eyes. After weeks of feeling isolated, betrayed by the person she'd trusted most, here was someone standing firmly in her corner. Someone who knew the worst of what she'd done and still believed in her. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't deserve your loyalty after what I did." "You made a mistake during the worst emotional crisis of your life," Janice said firmly. "It doesn't erase 15 years of being an exceptional dentist and mentor. We all have moments we're not proud of. It's what we do afterward that defines us." The wisdom in these words, coming from someone so much younger, struck Vivian deeply. Janice was right. This moment, however terrible, didn't have to define her future. She could acknowledge her mistake without allowing it to destroy everything else she'd built. With renewed determination, Vivian called Angelica as soon as their conversation ended, explaining Janice's observations about the lab report and their strategy moving forward. "Your receptionist has good instincts," Angelica noted with approval. "I'll have an expert review the report as well, but in the meantime, I agree. Accelerating the settlement is our priority. I'll contact Kensington today, see if we can schedule an emergency mediation session." The rest of the day passed in a strange dual reality. Vivian performed her professional duties with outward calm, while her mind worked furiously behind the scenes, planning contingencies and strategies. Janice maintained a reassuring presence throughout, handling patient interactions with exceptional care, and occasionally catching Vivian's eye with small, encouraging smiles. By closing time, Angelica had secured a mediation session for the following afternoon, an unusually quick arrangement that spoke to both attorneys' desire to resolve the matter expeditiously. Kensington seemed surprisingly amenable, Angelica reported over the phone. "Something's changed on their end. My guess? Tony's satellite office sale is time-sensitive, and he's getting pressure from the buyers. Can we use that?" Vivian asked, thinking strategically for the first time in days. "Absolutely. His urgency is our leverage. I'll push for full ownership of the main practice, the house, and a complete severance of financial ties moving forward. In exchange, he gets the satellite office free and clear, with expedited court approval for the sale." It was a clean solution, one that would give both parties what they most needed. Tony, his quick cash infusion from the sale. Vivian, her complete independence from him professionally and personally. The mediation session the following day was held in a neutral conference room at a downtown law office. Vivian arrived with Angelica, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. Tony and Kensington were already seated at the large table, along with the mediator, a retired judge named Harold Greenfield, with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. "Good afternoon," Judge Greenfield began, once introductions were complete. "I understand both parties are interested in reaching a prompt resolution. Let's not waste time. Ms. Holden, please present your client's position." Angelica outlined their proposal succinctly. Vivian would retain full ownership of the main dental practice and the marital home, while Tony would receive the satellite office with court approval to proceed with its sale. All other assets would be divided according to a formula they'd prepared, with neither party making ongoing claims against the other's future earnings. This represents a fair division based on Dr. Vivian Malone's substantial contribution to establishing the main practice through her inheritance, Angelica concluded. It also accommodates Dr. Anthony Malone's immediate interest in finalizing the sale of the satellite location. Judge Greenfield turned to Kensington. "Your response?" Kensington cleared his throat. exchanging a glance with Tony before speaking. "We find the general framework acceptable, with two modifications. First, a 20% interest in any future sale of the main practice within the next 5 years. And second, a non-disparagement clause binding both parties." The non-disparagement request caught Vivian's attention immediately. It would prevent either of them from speaking negatively about the other publicly or professionally. Given Sabrina's threats, such protection might benefit Vivian as much as Tony. "We can accept the non-disparagement clause," Angelica responded, "provided it extends to associates and representatives of both parties." She emphasized the word associates, while giving Kensington a meaningful look. "But we maintain our position that Dr. Vivian Malone retains 100% ownership of the main practice, with no future claims against its value." The negotiation continued for nearly 2 hours, with proposals and counterproposals flying across the table. Throughout, Vivian noticed that Tony seemed unusually subdued, occasionally checking his phone and whispering urgently to Kensington. Whatever was happening with the satellite office sale, it clearly had him anxious. Finally, Judge Greenfield called for a short break. As Vivian and Angelica stepped into the hallway to confer privately, Angelica's phone buzzed with a text message. "It's from my investigator," she said, reading quickly. "The satellite office buyers have given Tony a 48-hour deadline to secure clean title. If he can't deliver by tomorrow, they're walking away and pursuing another location." "That explains his anxiety," Vivian observed. "He needs this settled today." "Exactly. And that gives us the final push we need." Angelica's expression was determined as they returned to the conference room. When the session resumed, Kensington made one last attempt at securing a percentage of the main practice's future value, but his arguments lacked conviction. Judge Greenfield, sensing the shift in momentum, proposed a compromise: full separation of the practices with no future claims on either side, the house to Vivian, and an expedited court approval process for Tony's satellite office sale, conditional upon a comprehensive non-disparagement agreement. Both parties accepted. Within the hour, preliminary documents were drafted, to be finalized by both attorneys and submitted to the court the following morning. As the session concluded, Vivian found herself face-to-face with Tony in the hallway. Angelica and Kensington had stepped aside to discuss procedural details, leaving the soon-to-be ex-spouses momentarily alone. "So, that's it," Tony said quietly. 15 years, dissolved in an afternoon. "The marriage ended the moment you decided to betray it," Vivian replied, her voice steady. "This is just paperwork." Tony nodded, a flash of what might have been genuine regret crossing his features. "For what it's worth, I am sorry, Viv. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did. You deserved better." "Yes, I did." Vivian studied him. This man she'd once loved so completely, now almost a stranger. "I hope the satellite office sale goes through smoothly." A flicker of surprise crossed his face at her knowledge of his deadline. "Thank you. And I hope you find happiness, whatever that looks like for you now." It was as close to a genuine moment as they'd had since the discovery of his affair. Vivian felt a curious sense of closure washing over her. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a releasing of the acute pain that had driven her actions these past weeks. "Goodbye, Tony," she said simply, turning away to join Angelica. "There's one more thing you should know," Tony called after her. "About Sabrina." Vivian froze, then slowly turned back. "What about her?" "She came to me yesterday, told me about the mouthwash situation." Tony lowered his voice. "And about her blackmail attempt." Vivian's heart pounded. "And?" "I told her to back off. Made it clear that if she pursued any allegations against you, I'd testify that she'd been emotionally unstable, making increasingly bizarre claims since learning about our divorce." He shrugged slightly. "It's the least I could do, all things considered." The unexpected alliance momentarily stunned Vivian. "Why would you do that?" "Because despite everything, I don't want to see your career destroyed. And because what happened between us doesn't justify what she was trying to do to you." Tony met her gaze directly. The non-disparagement agreement works both ways, Viv. What's done is done. Let's both move forward." With that, he walked away to rejoin Kensington, leaving Vivian to process this surprising development. Had Tony actually intervened on her behalf with Sabrina? Or was this another manipulation? A final attempt to position himself as noble despite his betrayal? Ultimately, it didn't matter. The settlement was nearly complete, the separation of their professional and personal lives almost finalized. Whatever Tony's motives, the threat from Sabrina would likely diminish once the divorce was official and the non-disparagement agreement in place. "Everything okay?" Angelica asked, rejoining her. "Better than expected," Vivian replied truthfully. "I think it's really almost over." The court approved their settlement agreement the following day, an unusually rapid process facilitated by Judge Harmon's clear desire to see the matter resolved efficiently. Tony received immediate authorization to proceed with his satellite office sale, while Vivian secured uncontested ownership of the main practice and their home. 15 years of marriage concluded with the stroke of a judge's pen. That evening, Vivian invited Janice to dinner, not at a restaurant this time, but at her home. As they sat on the back deck with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular hues of orange and pink, Vivian felt a curious lightness. Not happiness, exactly. The wounds were still too fresh for that, but perhaps its precursor, possibility. "I've been thinking about what comes next," she said, breaking their comfortable silence. "For the clinic, I mean." "Oh," Janice looked at her with interest. "The renovations you mentioned?" "That, yes. But something more fundamental, too." Vivian took a sip of her wine, organizing her thoughts. "When my father left me his inheritance, he told me to use it to build something meaningful, something that would help others the way his dental care had helped him. The clinic has done that for thousands of patients over the years." "It has," Janice agreed. "You've changed so many lives for the better." "Tutu, but I think it's time to expand that vision." Vivian turned to face the younger woman directly. "You mentioned wanting to go to dental school, but the financial barriers being prohibitive. Eventually I'll get there," Janice said, with the determined optimism that Vivian had come to admire in her. "It might take longer than I'd hoped, but what if you didn't have to wait?" Vivian interrupted gently. "What if I could help make it happen now?" Janice blinked, clearly not comprehending. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'd like to establish a scholarship program, starting with you. Full tuition, books, expenses, everything you'd need to complete your dental education without delay or financial strain." Janice's eyes widened, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. "Are you serious?" "Completely." Vivian smiled, warmed by the young woman's shock. "You have the intelligence, the compassion, and the dedication this profession needs. And frankly, after everything you've done for me these past weeks, your loyalty, your discretion, your friendship, this feels like the least I can do in return." "But it's too much," Janice protested, though her eyes shone with hope. "Dental school costs hundreds of thousands of dollars." "I know exactly what it costs," Vivian replied wryly, "and I also know what a good investment looks like. You're going to be an exceptional dentist, Janice. I'd be honored to help make that happen sooner rather than later." "I don't know what to say," Janice whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "This is beyond anything I could have imagined." "Say you'll accept," Vivian urged gently. "Say you'll let me do this one good thing amid all the chaos of these past months." Janice set down her wine glass and, in a spontaneous gesture that surprised them both, embraced Vivian tightly. "Thank you," she murmured. "I promise I won't let you down." As they separated, both a bit emotional, Vivian continued, "There's more to my plan, actually. Once you're qualified, I'd like to discuss the possibility of you joining the practice, not as an employee, but eventually as a partner." Janice's jaw dropped. "A partner? In Malone Dental? Well, we'll need a new name by then," Vivian mused. "Something that reflects the fresh start, the new direction. But yes, I'm not getting any younger. And I've been thinking about legacy, about what happens to all we've built when I eventually retire. That's years away, Janice pointed out. Yes, but good planning starts early. And after recent events, I've learned not to take anything for granted. Vivian raised her glass in a small toast. To new beginnings, and to proper planning for them. To new beginnings, Janice echoed, her face alight with excitement and gratitude. The following Monday, Vivian arrived at the clinic earlier than usual. The weekend had been strangely peaceful. The first she'd spent truly alone in her home, without the specter of Tony's betrayal and the pending divorce hanging over her. She'd used the time to begin sketching plans for the clinic's renovation, imagining new layouts, updated equipment, expanded services. As she unlocked the front door, she noticed something different. The sign above the entrance, Malone Dental Clinic, now displayed only her name, Tony's having been removed as specified in their settlement agreement. The sight gave her an unexpected thrill of ownership, of reclamation. Inside, she walked through the quiet rooms, seeing them with fresh eyes, not as the shared space she and Tony had built together, but as the canvas for her new vision. This clinic had been her father's legacy to her. Now she would transform it into her legacy for others. Janice arrived shortly after, her usual cheerful efficiency now tinged with a new excitement about her future. They worked together through the morning, the rhythm of the practice comfortingly familiar despite all that had changed. During lunch break, Vivian's phone rang. Angelica, calling with final confirmation that all paperwork had been processed and filed. It's official, the attorney declared. The divorce is complete, the property division recorded, and the non-disparagement agreement in effect. You are legally and completely free, Dr. Malone. Thank you, Angelica, Vivian replied, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. For everything. My pleasure. Though I have to say, in all my years of practice, I've never had a case quite like yours. The toilet water incident will remain one of my favorite professional anecdotes. Confidentially, of course. Vivian chuckled despite herself. Not my proudest moment, but I suppose there's a certain poetic justice to it. Indeed, and speaking of justice, I received confirmation that Sabrina Payne has withdrawn all threats and allegations. It seems your ex-husband's intervention had the desired effect. After ending the call, Vivian sat quietly in her office, absorbing the finality of it all. 15 years of marriage, concluded. The threat from Sabrina, neutralized. The clinic, unquestionably hers. The future, entirely hers to shape. A soft knock at her door interrupted her reflections. It was Janice, holding a small, wrapped package. "What's this?" Vivian asked, surprised. "Just a little something to mark the occasion," Janice explained, setting the gift on her desk. "Go ahead, open it." Vivian unwrapped the package to find a beautiful, engraved brass nameplate for her desk. It read simply, Dr. Vivian Malone, founder and director. "It's perfect," Vivian said softly, running her fingers over the elegant lettering. "Exactly what I needed today." "I thought it might help make things feel official," Janice replied with a smile. "New beginnings and all that." "New beginnings," Vivian agreed, placing the nameplate prominently on her desk. "And speaking of which, I have a meeting scheduled next week with an architectural firm to discuss the renovation plans. I'd like you to join me, if you're available. Your input would be valuable." Janice's face lit up. "I'd be honored. I actually have some ideas I've been thinking about, ways to make the patient experience more comfortable, especially for anxious patients." "Perfect. We'll make it a working lunch." Vivian glanced at her schedule. "Now, I believe Mrs. Henderson is waiting for her crown fitting." As Janice headed back to reception, Vivian took a moment to appreciate how much had changed in just a few short months. The betrayal that had threatened to destroy her had instead catalyzed a transformation. Painful? Yes, but ultimately liberating. She had reclaimed not just her practice, but her sense of self, her vision for the future. The afternoon proceeded with a satisfying rhythm of patient care, each interaction reinforcing Vivian's sense of purpose and professional identity. This was who she was at her core. Not Tony Malone's wife, but Dr. Vivian Malone, dedicated practitioner, mentor, builder of legacies. As the last patient departed and the staff began preparing to close for the day, Vivian stepped outside briefly, breathing in the early evening air. The clinic's sign caught her eye again, her name alone now, gleaming in the golden hour sunlight. A memory surfaced, her father standing proudly beside her at her dental school graduation, his eyes brimming with tears as he told her, "You've made something wonderful of yourself, Vivian. Now go make something wonderful for others." She had done that, despite the detours and heartbreaks along the way, and she would continue to do so, on her own terms, with new purpose and clarity. Inside, Janice was waiting with a stack of patient files that needed review before tomorrow. "Ready to tackle these?" she asked. "Absolutely," Vivian replied, her voice strong and certain. "Let's get started." As they worked side by side into the evening, Vivian felt an unfamiliar but welcome sensation expanding within her chest. Not quite happiness yet, but its reliable precursor. Hope. Hope for the renovated clinic. Hope for Janice's future as a dentist. Hope for her own journey forward, unburdened by betrayal and deceit. The toilet water revenge, that moment of vindictive madness, now seemed like a distant memory from another life. A temporary detour rather than a defining act. What would define her instead was this: the practice she was building, the legacy she was creating, the lives she would continue to improve. When they finally prepared to leave, Janice paused at the door. "Same time tomorrow, Dr. Malone?" Vivian smiled, a genuine, unforced expression that reflected her internal shift. Same time tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days to come. Together, they stepped out into the evening, locking the clinic door behind them. Not an ending, but a continuation. A fresh chapter in a story still very much being written. Vivian's story, on her terms, at last. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.